Hi, I'm Sheri DeMaris and welcome to Macro Magic. Today I'm going to teach you a lot about miso. Miso Master, it's an organic miso company, was just on my show, and we're celebrating National Miso Day on September 18th. So in honor of that, I'm going to show you some recipes with their beautiful misos that they have shipped to me in all different flavors. This is a chickpea miso, and we have a mellow white miso, and we have a traditional red miso. And in case you are not familiar with miso, it's a fermented product, sort of like a bean paste that you can use in all different ways. The company gives you a little flyer with tons of different usages of miso. You could make it as a pancake syrup, a miso salmon lemon ginger glaze, or a tasty tahini sauce. There's so many ways to use miso. But the most traditional way is in miso soup. So I'm going to show you a simple recipe for miso soup from my cookbook, Macro Magic. And this is really great, beneficial. It's a wonderful, healthy product for kids and adults. And today we're going to use the chickpea miso in the miso soup. So miso soup is very simple to make. What I like to say in my cookbook, if you use a round vegetable, a root vegetable, and a leafy green vegetable, you get a balanced miso soup. But that's not to say you can't just make a simple broth out of miso soup. Or if you've been to a Japanese restaurant, sometimes you can chop up scallions and a little bit of tofu and not put too many ingredients in the miso soup and just make it really brothy. So we're heating up about 2 cups of water till it boils. And we always want to put in our onions, scallions, or shallots in first. So this is a half of an onion, and I'm going to cut it super thin into half-moon slices. Now the reason why you want to boil the onion first, it takes the acidity out of the onion and makes it really sweet. So I just put that in the boiling water. Now the other ingredient that's very popular in miso soup are shiitake mushrooms and wakame seaweed. So shiitake mushrooms are fresh or dried. This is a dried shiitake mushroom. It's actually a type of mushroom called donku. So donku mushrooms are very medicinal. They sort of have curl when they dry, and they have a lot of vitamin D in them. So if you can't get dried mushrooms, you can just put fresh mushrooms out on a plate in the sun, and it dries them and collects some of the sunlight or vitamin D. So we just we soak it for about 10 minutes, and we chop it super thin. And with shiitake, when you soak shiitake, you want to use the water, the soaking water as well. So you can just put that in there with the onions while they're simmering. And the other ingredient that we want to put in the miso soup is wakame seaweed. So sea vegetables are really important for our diet right now. They're full of minerals. They're full of iodine, which helps the thyroid. And you buy them dried, and you just need almost like an inch per cup of liquid in your miso soup. So we have about an inch. When you take it out of the soaking water, you want to remove the heavy stem. It's a little bit too chewy and not easy to digest. You don't use the soaking water in the soup from the seaweed because it's a little bit too salty. So you just cut it up to small pieces, and you put that in with the boiling onions and the shiitake mushroom. So that's sort of our base. It's like a unami type base. Oftentimes in Japanese restaurants you get that flavor, but sometimes there's chemicals like MSG and things like that. This is more natural and really enhances the flavor of the soup. You could put a piece of kombu in there as well. Kombu is like wakame seaweed, only it's a little heavier and thicker, and that can make a nice base, the kombu and the shiitake mushroom for the soup. So after we cut our onion, We're going to use this white vegetable. It's called daikon, D-A-I-K-O-N. These you can find at your Whole Foods markets or any local health food store or farmers markets. Daikon is an incredible root vegetable. It helps, it's almost like a diuretic. It helps remove excess fats and water from the body. It's very refreshing. You can just slice it and boil it like you would do a carrot and eat it as sticks. Or you can grate it. In Japanese restaurants, they grate it and they serve it on fish, and it helps you digest the protein. So we're going to turn our water down a little bit, just down to simmer. So we always want to add the root vegetable first. Yeah, the root vegetable first, the round vegetable, which is the onion we've already added, but if you add a round vegetable, you want to do that next. And then you always finish off with the leafy greens. You do not want to overboil your leafy greens. So to cut the daikon, I simply cut off a section of the root and then slice it lengthwise, and you can just cut it into little pieces. Again, you don't want to put big pieces of one thing, little pieces of another. It should be all pretty much balanced in your soup. This is a small pan of water, so we're not going to overload it with vegetables. We don't want a stew, we want a soup. So we'll put the daikon in with the onions and shiitake and the wakame. And we also have some tofu. So this is a great form of protein. It's very light, easy to digest, wonderful soy product. We've interviewed Neil Barnard on the show, and he's a medical doctor in Washington, D.C., and just wrote a book on hormones saying that, you know, good quality soy is beneficial for everyone. And I know there's a big scare about soy, but it is a very easy food to digest, and Japanese women have been eating it for many, many years. So it's a great source of protein. We'll put the tofu in. Now, tofu is a very cooling food. Japanese people often eat it in the summer without even cooking it. It cools the body off. We're just going to put it in and simmer it for a little bit. And then we're going to finish off the dish with some leafy greens. So these are bok choy. And when you cut your greens, you want to separate the bottom half from the top. You don't want to put the longer cooking part of the green in with the leaves, because the leaves will get soggy and then the root part of the green will get overcooked. So just put a little bit of green in there to make some color, and then we're going to put some leaves. So eating greens, especially all year long, is so beneficial for your lungs and for your overall red blood cells. This is a super healthy soup. So as the water is boiling, we're going to add the miso before we add the green tops, simply because the green tops are the most delicate, and if we leave them in there too long, they're going to turn dark. So we're going to take a little bit of water. You can scoop some water out of your soup, or you could start with cold water, and you're just going to use about 3/4 teaspoon of miso per cup of liquid. So we have about 2 cups of liquid in here. I'm going to put 2 3/4 teaspoons of miso. And you want to dissolve the miso first. You just don't want to throw it in the soup, because it will stay in a clump. And if you dissolve it first, it sort of blends more easily in the soup. So this is chickpea miso. It's made, it's gluten-free. It's made with chickpeas. And it's so sweet and delicious. And this is a wonderful soup, especially in the hot summer. So we're going to put the diluted miso in there. When you put the miso in, you want to turn down the water and not let it boil. You don't want to boil miso too much if you're looking to add it to a soup, because it will take out the flavor and stop the enzymes. The enzymes will come to the surface and sort of create clouds in your soup. So we stir that in. It already looks so delicious. And then we're going to add the leafy greens. Now again, you can mix, because I'm showing 3 separate recipes today with 3 separate flavors of miso, but you can combine flavors of miso in your soup. You could put a little red, a little chickpea, or a little white, a little red, whatever you desire for a different flavor. So you let that simmer, you turn it down to simmer, and let it just simmer very softly, not boiling. And you'll see it gets a little bit cloudy on top, and then you know that it's done. So to pour our soup in, it's always nice to have a little garnish. I had a huge scallion from my garden, which I forgot to bring, but scallions, parsley, cilantro, celery leaves, anything makes a nice garnish for a miso soup. So we're going to turn this off. We're not going to let it boil. And we're going to scoop out our soup, and already it's so delicious looking. The shiitake mushrooms really help. And we're going to, and the chickpea miso is light, so it's not going to be like a dark miso like you get sometimes in restaurants, but it's just as salty and delicious. So that's our miso soup, which we're going to put out here. And usually when I teach cooking online, I'm like, any questions? But you can always email us with any questions after you try your miso soup with the chickpea miso. So our next recipe is going to be a simple little way to ferment tofu to make it taste like cheese. So I saved the other half of the piece of tofu. Now, by the way, when you buy tofu, you need to open it from the package, drain the water, rinse it off. Some people like to press the liquid out a little bit, and then store it in a glass jar filled with water, and change the water every 3 to 4 days. And that keeps the leftover tofu fresh. So this is about half a block of tofu. And I'm going to show you the use of another miso, and that's the mellow white miso. And what we're going to do is we're going to frost all the sides like we frost a cake. And this is going to ferment the miso and make it taste more like blue cheese. And after it's fermented, you can blend it into a dressing. You can use it as a sauce. Miso is very yin when we talk about yin and yang, and needs salt. So even when you eat raw miso, it's good to put soy sauce on it and ginger on it to help you digest it. If you're whipping it into desserts, adding a lot of sweetener to it, you might have a hard time digesting it. So this is a great recipe because the salt of the miso ferments the tofu and then makes it super digestible. And it's a great alternative if you're trying to lessen fat in your diet and not eat so much cheese. So we're going to frost this tofu, and we're going to leave it on for 3 or 4 days in the refrigerator. And it's going to ferment. And when we come back from commercial break, I'll show you what it looks like after you've fermented it for a couple days. Now, don't have anybody eat this in your house thinking it's a piece of cake, because it's very salty and you don't want to eat all that miso. And during break, we're going to show you a quick commercial that includes some more information about the misos and Miso Celebration Day. Welcome back. I'm Sheri DeMaris, and I'm showing you a selection of recipes using Miso Master Organic Miso in celebration of Miso Day, which is coming up on September 18th. So we've already made some miso soup using the yellow chickpea miso. And then I showed you what to do with the mellow white was to frost a piece of tofu and leave it for a couple days. And again, don't eat it like you think it's cake. It's simply fermenting from the outside in the tofu. And so this is what it actually looks like. It stays a little light when you decide to rinse off the miso. Now you can just scrape off the miso and use that again for your miso soup, your marinades, your dressings. Or you can rinse it off, whatever you prefer. So this is what the tofu looks like after it's been fermented for a couple days. And you'll be amazed when you slice it. You can slice it into chunks and put it in like a romaine salad. Or you can eat it and just serve it on a tray with crackers as a replacement for cheese. Or you can put it in the blender and blend it into a dressing. So a lot of people enjoy just eating the little squares. Be careful with young children. You don't want to give them too much salty food because kids love this. So you want to be cognizant of, making their miso soup a little lighter and maybe not fermenting the tofu as long as 3 or 4 days. So now I'm going to show you a dressing, and we have a photo of the recipe to put up on the screen. And this is a red miso dressing. And red miso is very unique. It's very different in flavor and in color. Just opening it up, you can sort of smell it. It's strong miso. And it makes great dressings, great marinades. It's really got a very unique flavor. So for this dressing, we're just going to put 1 tablespoon of red miso in the dressing. And you'll see how dark it is in color. And we're going to add some lemon juice, which I already squeezed. And we're going to add some tahini. And then we're going to add water, just a little bit at a time, to dilute it. So we use a whisk, and we start off with the tahini. Now it calls for 2 tablespoons. I'm just going to make a smaller version, so I'm going to put 1 teaspoon in, or 2 teaspoons in. And with tahini makes it really rich. Tahini is actually sesame seeds ground up like peanut butter. And it's a wonderful resource of calcium for your bones. So 2 teaspoons of that. And then we're going to cut this recipe down to just 1 teaspoon of lemon juice. And then we're going to add 1 teaspoon of red miso. Now, like I said, do it to taste. When I teach students from my cookbook, I usually say, don't follow recipes to the T. You want to do it to your taste. So taste your food, see if it needs more water, more seasonings, whatever it is to your liking. And we'll get some water. So you gently add the water to the consistency of the dressing that you want and the saltiness that you want. Again, keep in mind miso is very salty. So if you're overdoing the miso in your soups or your dressings or whatever, cut back a little bit if you feel too tight, or sometimes you feel it in your back and your kidneys. So just dissolving this is a wonderful dressing, by the way. You can just steam some vegetables and put this over. You can put it on a green salad. It's refreshing, it's light, it's got a salty, creamy, umami taste to it. So this is the dressing. which you know, it's so versatile. With these so many flavors of miso and so many different ingredients, you can create so many different dishes. So that's our lemon tahini red miso dressing. Now we're going to make a marinade. So to make a marinade is much thicker, and that's something that you could soak tofu in and then grill the tofu, or you could put fish in it or any sort of protein dish and use it as a sauce over it or cook with it. The amazing thing with miso is you make the sauce and then you put it maybe in the oven or maybe on the top of the stove, and you simmer it, and the flavors just go, you know, soak right into it. So for the marinade, we're going to start off, and again, we have a photo of the recipe. We're going to start off with the red miso again. Now this time, we're going to use a little bit more red miso. In the recipe, it calls for a 1/4 cup. Again, I'm going to make a small amount, so I'm just going to show about 1/8 of a cup of red miso. And another nice thing about using these misos in dressings and marinades is you store them in your refrigerator, and they last for a super long time, so you can pour them out, use them on another salad, or marinate something else with them. So this is the red miso again. We're going to use about 1 tablespoon, we're cutting the recipe down, of mirin. Now mirin is a fermented, sort of like a wine tasting Japanese sauce. It's very sweet. You can buy it in your markets now. They do the lids really securely. Mirin sort of adds that sweet flavor to the dish. So we're going to do about a tablespoon of mirin. And we're going to use about a tablespoon of white wine. I stuck it in this bottle. And that sort of adds some sweetness, another dimension. We're going to do about 2 tablespoons of brown rice vinegar. Brown rice vinegar is not the same as white vinegar. It's made from brown rice. It's much more mild, and you can sprinkle it on your veggies, but it has that same vinegary taste, but it's not as strong as white vinegar. And then we're going to put about a teaspoon of toasted sesame oil. So toasted sesame oil is different flavor than regular sesame oil. It sort of has a nuttier flavor, but we like to put it in dressings. And then we're going to put some chopped garlic, which I chopped before the show, just a loose chop, and a little bit of ginger root. So this is fresh ginger root. Great Eastern Sun was on the show with Miso Master today, and they said they do carry jarred ginger without any sugar in it, which was really great to hear. So we're just going to grate the ginger. Again, the taste of ginger and miso and mirin and toasted sesame oil all combined to make this fabulous flavor. Now when you grate ginger, you can take the grated ginger and just squeeze the juice into it, or you could just put the little pieces. And then we're going to whisk it. Again, think about how thick you want your marinade. If it's a very bland dish like tofu, you want to marinate it pretty strong to get some flavor. If it's a very already salty item that you're marinating, you don't want a super strong marinade. So we're going to add a little bit of water just to thin it out. And already it smells up the whole studio. You can tell how really dynamic and wonderful this marinade is. I'm really excited to even put some tofu in there and marinate it for a while. So we have the red miso, the mirin, the wine, the brown rice vinegar, toasted sesame oil, garlic, and ginger. It's a great combination, right? So we're going to put that over here, and that's using the traditional red miso. So there's other recipes. If you go on the Miso Master website, you can actually read about all the different recipes they suggest and get more ideas with how to use these misos. What I learned today taping the show with Miso Master was they do come in plastic containers, but when you open them up, they have little certification notices that they do donate, or they're now certified plastic neutral. So they do give money back to helping to clean up the planet of plastics. But I do encourage you to use these containers over and over. I deliver food and make food for people, and they're great lunch boxes for kids. And you can also go down and visit the plant and learn about how the miso is made and talk to the people who make it and learn about the products. So I want to encourage everyone to celebrate Miso Day, this September 18th, and put on your apron, get some of these beautiful misos, try a recipe, post it on Instagram, Facebook, any kind of social media, and help celebrate National Miso Day. And thank you everyone for joining me, and I hope to see you next time on Macro Magic.